Hello, very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar in e-Mobilog series. This is Rahul Bagadia from pManifold, and I welcome you all from India. I hope you all are keeping safe and contributing in your own goodness to come out faster out of this COVID situation. pManifold, together with GIZ, is conducting e-Mobilog webinar series. The overall intention being to drive public transportation and its electrification faster and help with broader capacity building globally around this topic. Today's second topic, we are focusing on e-bus adoption and integration, lessons from Europe and the Middle East. We will be covering two discussions. One around e-bus initial planning and procurement of e-buses, where we will have a case study from Middle East. And second, around operations, charging, maintenance, how to drive end users, adoption, and how do we build up a business case for scale up of e-buses. And that will be a case study coming from Europe, Madrid and Spain in particular. We really hope that this learnings and best practices share across the country help all our professional community to drive e-bus adoption in a stronger form. I quickly introduce our three speakers from today, very experienced speaker. First is Shailendra Kaushik. Shailendra has 20 years experience in advisory, primarily PPP projects around transport. He is a transport planner and has worked across Asia, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Latin America, and Pacific. And he is co-founder of Cities Forum. Cities Forum is a catalyst organization working closely with cities, making cities driving sustainability and smartness, including e-mobility. We have another co-founder of Cities Forum, Mr. Hemi Ruiz Huesca. He has played multiple roles with cities, working directly in helping smart and e-mobility integration, and he is co-founder with Cities Forum. We are very glad to have Mr. Rafael Navarro. He is Deputy Director Transport Service, EMT Madrid. So this is a municipal council driven transport authority in Madrid who is looking after bus transportation. And they have integrated electric buses in their operation and going very systematic about it. So he and Rafael, Mr. Hemi will together share their Madrid case study. So this is the plan for today. I request my other co-moderator Laghu, who is transport advisor with GIZ India, to take the discussions forward. Laghu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rahul. Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope all of you are keeping yourself safe in this on these scenarios. So I'll just start with a brief introduction regarding the portfolio of GIZ in urban mobility. So we have a project called SMART-SUT, Sustainable Urban Transport, which is funded by the BMZ German government, and we are implementing it with Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Mahua as our political partner. Basically, this project is involving 3 states, which is Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and the Odisha, and we are working with 3 smart cities currently with Bhubaneswar, Coimbatore, and the Kochi, and with a scalability of other cities like Cuttack, Chennai, and Trivandrum. These are the cities which we are working with under various sustainable mobility areas. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as you can see, under the sustainable mobility, we are working under various themes. Start from bus transport, non-motorized transportation, institutional support to UMTA and municipal bodies and bus transport agencies. And the major focus is capacity building and the training. Specific to the e-buses and the electric mobility, our focus is on the training and the capacity building. And In this regard, we have initiated a national level study regarding the training need assessment for the electric buses, because we think that a huge transition is happening in India from conventional diesel and CNG buses to the electric buses, and that it gives us the feeling that it will create a huge requirement in terms of new skill set requirement and the training requirement. So currently, we have done our stakeholder consultation, multiple stakeholder consultation, including 7 STUs regarding the assessment of training need. And soon we will come up with the outcome of this study and will share with all of you. And this is a very brief introduction what we are doing under the urban mobility domain. And so as Rahul said, today we have 3 speakers and 2 cities with a very contrast structures as far as procurement of e-buses is concerned. While Mr. Kaushik is going to talk about the private sector participation and for the procurement of the buses, while the other model, which is in Madrid, is more of a outright purchase. And but at the same time, both are going to talk about what are the prerequisites required before we go ahead of the procurement of the e-buses, and specifically the private sector participation, which is very much similar to what we are doing in India. And we hope that we're going to learn a lot from out of these 2 cities. So without taking much of the time, I'll directly switch to our first speaker, Mr. Shailendra Kaushik. Shailen.
Yeah, thank you, Lagu. Thank you, Rahul, for introducing us. Rahul, can you arrange our presentation, the screen share for us, please?
Sure.
Yeah, can you show the slide? Yeah, it's all there. Yeah. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I think the people from different regions have joined this webinar, and I hope that everyone is keeping safe. So I'll take few minutes of your to introduce about Cities Forum, though Rahul has briefly introduced us. So Cities Forum is a young organization which was launched in 2018 in University of Oxford Transport Studies Unit. Primarily, the objective is to provide strategic advice in the area of sustainable development for various cities. And we also, in terms of our work areas, we have presence across 6 work areas, right from digital transformation to urban mobility, governance, finance, environment, social inclusion, and everything. Institutional and capacity building is one area where we work very intensively, and we did conduct some training program in COP25 recent event which happened in Madrid, and we conducted smart cities and future of mobility training program. Apart from that, in World Mobility Show and in Latin America, we did conduct some training program in electric buses. This is a project which we are doing right now in Europe for working with 6 cities in Europe in developing the user-friendly charging infrastructure. This project has been conceived with 24 partners, with city authorities, research organization, funding partner, and technology partner, which basically the objective is to penetrate the electric vehicle into various cities. So this is briefly about what we do. Then coming back to the city, I am today covering a city in the Middle Eastern region with primarily I will focus on planning, design, and procurement aspect. So this city in the year 2019 decided to implement a sustainable public transport project. The city size is roughly 1.5 million and it is forecasted to grow to 3 million, basically double in the next 20 years. The city already had a strategic transport model in place, and we did develop a transit planning model using the strategic model, using the AMI modeling software tool. And based on the travel demand forecast, finally the recommendation came that the city need not really a heavy mass transport system, but a light rail transit or a bus-based transportation system. Then the assessment was made for both the options using a multivariable analysis. And finally, the recommended option which came is basically development of a bus-based rapid transit system. And rather than using conventional buses, use of the electric buses. And the project was positioned as the electric mobility project. considering that the project include not only bus, so this is the scope of the work. The project include deployment of 300 electric buses, with some of the buses are articulated buses. Apart from that, the concessionaire also has to develop road infrastructure to operate these e-buses on a dedicated right of way. Then third point was that apart from the electric buses, the project also include implementation of 2000 electric chargers for cars and taxis throughout the city. So this is also included as part of the electric mobility project. And then the concession company also need to undertake the network design and optimize the full network. So it's rather a comprehensive public transport model. And the concessionaire has to operate the buses and also has to operate and maintain the asset, which basically is being built as part of the project through a predefined KPIs. The entire system is to be implemented over a 18-month period of time, and the successful consortium has to give 2 electric buses to the government authority on a pilot basis. And finally, the objective of the project is to reduce the greenhouse gases in urban areas and reduce the carbon emission as a result of the transport demand. So why ERT? What exactly is the electric rapid transit? So electric rapid transit is basically an LRT, but it runs on tires. So it's like articulated buses running on a dedicated corridor. So it's the next generation BRT, you can call it, bus rapid transit, but with electric buses. That is what the system is all about. Why we have chosen electric rapid transit? Because as per the travel demand forecast, right now the city did not need any kind of heavy system. So if you build a dedicated corridor and run the electric buses, the system is upgradable to an LRT system in the next 10 years or whenever the demand reaches to that point. And these buses has to compete with the private mode. So dedicated corridor will provide an attractive option for these users to switch from a private mode to a public transport mode. And since we are using an emerging technology which basically result into carbon neutral transit, so overall it will enhance the livability of the city. So this is why ERT has been chosen. Another important aspect was the cost consideration. So this table will give you an idea about the cost variation compared with the LRT system. So this cost was worked out based on the 50-kilometer dedicated transit corridor. If you see, X is the cost per kilometer for an electric rapid transit vehicle. So what is the cost for a light rail transit? So the capex cost is 3.85 time multiplier compared to an electric rapid transit. Wherever, interestingly, if you see OPEX, the light rail transit has less OPEX compared to the electric rapid transit. So that shows that the bus-based electric rapid transit project is a O&M intensive project rather than the capital intensive project. So this is the aspect which city need to right from beginning put in their mind, that what they are building the system is the maintenance oriented system. So they should have a sufficient funding provision available for the maintenance of these buses throughout the project concession. Then coming to the environment side of it, again ERT is basically the best suited. And overall, if you see, it's a 2.3x kind of multiplier compared to a LRT system. It's flexible because it is running on buses. Comfort is almost the same because we will be using almost the similar kind of scenario as in case of any modern rapid transit system. And as I told you, the flexibility in terms of operations is also there, and this system can be upgraded to LRT as a later stage. So that is the reason the city has chosen an electric rapid transit system. And since the whole project not only include the buses, it also include the charging stations for the private vehicle. So it's a complicated project with various kind of component. It includes the buses, the vehicle, batteries, charging infrastructure, road network upgrade, network planning, operations. So it's an integrated kind of project. And as I told you, it's an O&M driven project rather than capital cost driven. So first thing, the city has made a provision that for the duration of the concession, there should be a budgetary provision for any shortfall in case there is a requirement for the maintenance work. Okay, then the city also need a complete, a comprehensive electric bus or e-mobility adoption strategy, because the city currently has almost 1,500 buses, whereas in the first phase only 300 buses are to be electrified. So there is an option to convert all buses on electric buses. So the city need to be clear what exactly they want to do based on their studies. And as I told you, it is a systems thinking, not just a bus. It's not a bus. And if you look at Middle East, we basically considered three aspects: climate, which is very hot over here, the service delivery, and the network. So using these three metrics, the system has been planned. And one thing which basically we need to understand, that the city need to plan it right to do it right, because it includes a lot of complex, component which basically interlink with each other. So in that case, the project development is very, very important, because the project was to be implemented on a public-private partnership basis, wherein the concession company has to design, build, finance, operate, and then transfer the system. So a project development approach was kind of followed, which has got 5 different steps. So first step is the planning and design. And the responsibility of planning and design was rest with government. And then second step is the market sensing. So under the planning and design, based on the high level feasibility study, which include the transit corridor identification, bus specification, terminal planning, chargers and battery specification, customer requirement, then you test whatever is coming out, that how the industry expectation and what is the industry benchmark, whether we are not going overboard or underboard somewhere. And at that stage, you test your specific requirement with what other cities have done it, and then try to see where should I fix my KPIs for operations and other things. Then the third step is the contractual framework, which include the procurement framework as well. So you need to design a draft concession agreement, or whatever you call it, the contract agreement, which on one side is a balance approach, which basically satisfy the government objective with the industry expectation. And in order to bridge that gap between government objective and industry expectation, industry need to be engaged at each and every stage. So a very, very intensive industry engagement was required, so that what you are offering to the market should have a takeaway for industries. They should have, interest. The companies which will be bidding the project should have an interest. And then after all these 4 or 5 activities, then the final procurement process is to be finalized. So this is the step which we have taken. Coming to planning and design, the government need to be clear what exactly they wanted to achieve. In case of this city, the government was planning right now, the bus transport share is almost 10% of the total travel demand. They wanted to make it 4 times, which is optimum, but yes, they wanted to create new routes, they wanted to have dedicated corridor, and they had set a target to reach 40% over the next 5 years. And then second is improve the commercial viability of the project, and all the upside as a result of operator innovation goes to the operator. Then third is basically industry interaction, as I told you. And fourth is the competitive market. You have to make the tender very, very competitive, so that it is attractive for everyone. Then under planning and design, we identified various routes, location of depot, charging station location, bus stop spacing, and everything at the concept level was done by the government and funded through the government budget. And operator responsibility, or the concessionaire responsibility, is to include the detailed design of the infrastructure, because that is what he has to maintain over a 10 years period of time. All risks and mitigations are identified early. Electric chargers in the project also include deployment of 2000 electric charging station. So the location of these electric charging station was identified using a tool called Click, which basically you need to feed in the data, city size, number of paths, and then location of various activities within the cities, and then travel demand. And using some sort of algorithm, it basically gives you the location of the electric charging infrastructure. So this is a tool, developed by a European company, which basically would be used as part of this whole project. Then location of bus depot and terminal was identified, and a detailed bus specification was written for both normal buses as well as for the electric buses. Sorry, both for normal buses as well as for the articulated buses. And then the depot and terminal locations was decentralized. So the 6 depot has been identified, and the infrastructure is to be developed alongside the e-buses deployment, so that the whole project is ready at the same time. battery, since this is the essence of the whole project, so a detailed specification regarding what battery type, provision of battery management system, what, how the airflow and heat management will happen. So all these technical specification was written as part of the project. Customer is the key to the whole project. So the customer experience is centric while planning for the whole system. As I told you, the bus stop is located at every 200 meter because of the Gulf. And review of patronage and customer feedback was part of one of the KPIs for the concession company. We also looked into maintenance aspect, like one is program to ensure, which is basically that vehicles are always available and fit for purpose. Second is the PPM, which is planned preventive maintenance, which is scheduled maintenance at regular interval. And in case you find any issue in the PPM, then reliability centered maintenance to be done as per, in the next service. So all these maintenance guidelines were also written. This is an interesting thing because market sensing is very, very important and benchmarking. If you look at it, these table shows that how, if you privatize a bus operation or if you electrify a bus operations, what is the unit cost reduction and how various KPIs improve after the system is built. So this source of information is a transport economic study from one of the company, and they did prove that once you privatize bus operations or once you electrify bus operation, there is a substantial improvement in terms of the service level delivery and reduction in the operating cost. So using those numbers, which are basically there, the city has to see that where they would want to fix. And considering all those things, the recommended business model has been finalized, which basically says that the bus operations need to be outsourced. The competition would be a controlled competition through a competitive tendering process. Funding model is a gross cost plus incentive model. Contract bundling was done. So as per the 6 depot, the contracts are bundled out and no operator to hold more than 2 contracts. The duration is 8 years plus the renewal option provision was there. And the role of transport authority, which currently running the buses, would transform from an operator to a regulatory or a planning organization. Then there are certain procurement issues and contractual issues, which is very, very important in a PPP project, which these authority need to identify. They need to know what they are offering to the market, what is the procurement approach, what is the fleet implementation approach, and then how to achieve a level playing field considering the staff and fleet and depot. They need to engage with the market and all those kind of things. And in contractual issues, which is basically part of the concession, you need to define what is the payment model, how the incentive and penalties using various KPIs is to be made. End of term arrangement, how the transition will happen when the concession is finished. Then termination right and default and cure is very, very important because public transport is a service project. In case of any default by either a concession company, the buses should not stop. So there should be a proper provision of cure and taking over the project by the government. What kind of securities, because all these project is to be implemented using a project SPV. So project SPV is a new company. So you need to have some parent company guarantee, which basically ensure that in case SPV suffers either financially, then the parent company will come to the rescue. And then since the project is to be funding through a private finance basis using debt, so there should be a provision of step-in right for the lenders, insurance, performance bond. So it's a detail, you need to plan it right, as I told you, to do it right. So all these aspects are done as part of this whole project. So you also need to understand that there is no single solution. You need to consider the local consideration. It is not like that Madrid has done this way or Adelaide has done this way, so we should also do that way. You need to understand what is the local consideration, what kind of companies would be interesting, what is the capability of those companies, and accordingly design the contract. This is very important, industry engagement, because ultimately PPP is a public-private partnership. And private sector, it is not that something, government think that I should give or transfer all my risks to private sector. No, you need to consider what the private sector expectation is and the requirement is, and then set the project right. So this is a slide, if you look at these graphs, the first graph shows that the bus timetable, which we basically planned initially, that all the bus schedule, the entire route throughout the day should be finished in 55 minutes. And these lines, green line, if you see, this is the average reality, what is average in terms of compared to the actual schedule. And you see that more or less, everywhere the average is above the scheduled time. But if you tweak in a manner considering the network, that in peak time, the time to complete the trip is more than the non-peak time, and you define that the time to complete the route for peak and non-peak time varies, and then look at the actual number in terms of the green line, so it basically matches. And this is what you call it the realistic KPIs. You don't have to be very idealistic while framing the KPIs. Those are realistic KPIs. So this is the suggestion which came as part of the industry engagement. Same for payment mechanism, because this city is traditionally, the buses are operating by the government department, and as the first privatization initiative project, the operator was not willing to collect the fare box revenue risk, because on the other side the government has planned to increase the patronage on public transport by many multiple in five years period of time. So the fare box revenue should rest with the government, and rather the monthly fee to be paid by the transport department. So that is the kind of feedback came from the market. Initially government was willing that all fare box revenue risk to be taken care by the developer or the concession company or the operator. So all these KPIs in terms of payment mechanism, operations, we discussed in advance with the market and took their feedback initially. Like for example, increase patronage incentive. So government has come out over there. So they say if there is a natural growth of patronage, or then operator should not get benefit out of it. Operator should be benefited if the patronage growth is because of operator-led initiative. So this the suggestion from the government, which the industry has accepted. Then roles and responsibility, because it is a PPP project, so there are different tasks and different authority and operator, they are responsible for these different tasks. Like as I told you, concept, design and feasibility. So all initial work is the authority responsibility, and then design engineering, financing, deployment of buses, operations and maintenance is operator responsibility. And performance monitoring is again government responsibility, apart from payment of monthly fee. Contract variation is a joint responsibility. So these are some of the roles and responsibility, and these details are further subdivided into 52 activities. And using those 52 activities, the performance indicators were also finalized using a balanced scorecard approach, because traditionally we see that public transport project, the KPIs are either related to customer satisfaction or the technical specification related to the bus operations. So rather we used the balanced scorecard approach, which basically balances the financial and the operational aspect, and then come out with a detailed assessment. So under the balanced scorecard, we have 6 key success dimensions. Under growth and learning, what is the patronage growth? Customer, under customer you have all KPIs related to operations. Internal process, asset utilization, vehicle reliability, safety and security, like freedom from accident, freedom from crime. Financial efficiency in terms of reporting to government, and environment in terms of reduction of vehicle emissions. So all these KPIs then further subdivided, and each KPIs were given a weightage, and this weightage can change over time, and every year there is a review to change those weightage, and this is how the overall KPI score, composite score, was kind of worked out. Tender evaluation, this is another thing which basically the government need to do it right. How the tender will need to be evaluated, what we are going to pay to the authority, to the concession company, or the concession company has to pay to government. So in this project, the consortium need to be led by a bus operator, and tender evaluation is based on the 2 financial indicator. One is the monthly leasing cost per bus, as the 300 new electric buses are being procured. So the concession company need to give the monthly leasing cost per bus, and secondly monthly O&M cost per kilometer. So these two are the indicator which basically being used under the tender evaluation criteria. Another thing used looking at the various cities indicators and the local cost, it was also finalized that the monthly O&M cost per kilometer should not exceed the 75% of the current O&M cost. So this is the limit which was defined, and there is a performance incentive mechanism also built in the contract, that if operator led initiative, if there are KPIs which basically they excel as per the benchmark index, then operator would be given an incentive. Project schedule, this is very important. We had almost a year project development phase, and then 6 months of phase for financial closure doing detail engineering, 18-month implementation, and 8.5 year operations and maintenance. So planning is very important, as I told you. Likely outcome, finally the project, once it get completed, the whole city network will change through this green mode of transportation, which will result into reduction of emission. In terms of learning outcome, the whole process, because we were discussing with the GIZ about the complex and challenges which Indian cities are facing. So one thing which basically came out with this, that the early commencement of pre-tender activities is required. You need to allow sufficient time for planning, project planning. In this case, we had 1 year time, but if you desire to, contract this 1 year to 3 months or 6 months, then because if the planning phase is not right, you will not have a good implementation. If the implementation is not correct, you will have issues with the operations and maintenance. So you need to plan it right to do it right. Industry engagement is again, very important, where you need to discuss all risk allocation and contract design so that there is no contract departure later on. Then time of transition is very important, because right now the buses are being run by government, so there is a transition time, and during the transition time the KPIs need to be, the government need to be little bit flexible with these KPIs. Data availability is again an important aspect, because if there is a lack of information, the risk is there. And then performance regime and KPIs should have significant risk reward consequences. And if there is an event beyond operator control, so don't punish him. That is again a learning. And create realistic timeline both for transition and contract obligation. So this is what the learning outcome as part of this whole project, I could summarize. So this is what about my presentation.
So thank you very much, Alan. I would say very, very unique structure which you are following in this city, and probably I've never seen such kind of a comprehensive packaging, including the buses and the road infrastructure, and that is on PPP. Yeah, let's see how will it go. And so before we fly from Middle East to Madrid, we have a small poll for the audience. And Rahul, how much time we have for this?
I think let's take quick 15 seconds for people to read and respond. They have to select one of their most preferred thing which they believe will go for contracting. So what feasible options for procuring electric buses? There are 5 options laid down.
Yeah, so it's like outright purchase by the transport authority, and all next 4 are variants of private sector participation, and which Shailendra also focus. So I think audience needs to find out, based on the risk associated with the electric buses, which is the most, they think that this is the most feasible one to go ahead. So we have about 15 seconds now. Oh,
So these are the results, team. So here I think GCC contract, including charging, and transport authority paying separately for electricity, that has received most number of responses, 34%, followed by what Shailendra presented for Middle East case study, which is lease plus OPEX and Transport Authority pay separately for electricity. The lowest option has been received by outright purchase by transport agency and also the net cost contract model. So interesting results. I think we will continue. In fact, the next presentation is by Hemi and Rafael, who will present Madrid case study and how using the first option they have been able to drive success with better planning. So over to you, Hemi.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored and I'm delighted for having been invited to share my insights about the overall status of e-bus market in Europe, and also to talk about the specific case of Madrid. I'm going to start explaining you the framework, the policy framework in the European Commission about shifting to clean vehicles in terms of buses. The European Commission, the European Union, has set a target of at least 45% of newly registered buses equipped with alternative powertrains. It includes not only electric but also GNC, for instance. It might seem an ambitious target, but it depends on the context, on the countries and cities, because in case of medium-sized cities, this is a quite ambitious target. But you'll see in the coming slides that for large cities, large European cities, this is not enough. They are being way more ambitious, and most of them have already committed to deliver 100% fully electric buses in the municipal network.
I mean, we are not seeing your presentation. Can you please accept screen share?
Okay, sorry. Can you see it now?
Yes, Amy. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I was explaining first of all the status, the policy status of in the European Union regarding clean means of transport in public transport, and in the case of buses. So now I want to give you some quick key figures about the adoption of electric buses fleets in Europe. During last year, the percentage of electric buses registered on average was 12%. Yeah, and you know that China is leading this market, but at present we have in Europe 4,000 electric buses. But the good thing is that the ratio, this share, is going to rise up to 20% during this year in 2020, according to the forecast of the UITP. So this market is going to grow considerably during the coming years, and this is a clear trend. And I think this is sorry. Yeah, this is an interesting slide because it is going to help us to understand how the different countries and cities in Europe are evolving or are making progresses in terms of shifting to electric buses fleets. We have some interesting examples. You can see here medium-sized cities like Groningen in the Netherlands that has already deployed 160 electric buses. You can see also the case of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. They are operating 100 electric buses between the airport, the Schiphol airport, and the city center. Of course, you have large cities, unfortunately not European cities anymore, like London, that have a really ambitious strategy and plans to shift into electric buses fleets. And two more cases, the case of Madrid that we are going to focus on later on, where we can find 83 electric buses, some of them to be deployed during this year. And the most interesting thing is the plans that they have, what they're thinking about. They've already committed to deliver 50 electric buses per year during the coming years. So I would say they are at the front. They are the front runners of electrification of the bus public transport network in the south of Europe. And we have a quite shocking case. This is the case of Paris. They've already awarded a framework contract for delivering purchasing 800 electric buses. It's the biggest, the largest contract in Europe regarding electric buses, and they are going to have 150 electric buses operating during this year, and they've committed to have in 2025 a fully electrified bus network in the city. We have here another interesting slide. I'm going to explain it quickly. We have here the forecast of regarding how the electric bus fleets are going to evolve in globally, not only in Europe but also in China and the US and the rest of the world. As you see, according to the UITP forecast, in Europe and in India, probably they are going to be the two regions where the electrification of public bus network is going to be stronger. And you have also, and in this small graph on top left of this slide, where you can see how is the electric bus share of sales at present. And another forecast coming from Bloomberg Neft, where they've stated that at present the percentage of electric buses sales in Europe is 50%. We're talking about an average of the public tender processes that there are currently being delivered. And of course, this percentage is going to grow up to 80% during the coming 20 next years. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, please continue.
Now I'm moving directly to the case of Madrid. I think these figures are going to give you a quick overview about the relevance of the public transport network. That is, I'm going to show you here the figures, the key figures coming from the EMT, the Municipal Transport Company of the city of Madrid, because they are managing and operating 211 lines of buses with a total network of 3,800 kilometers. They have more than 2,000 buses. 86% of this fleet are green, are using green technology or basically GNC on electric buses. They have at present they have 83 electric buses, but as I mentioned before, they've committed to increase that amount by 50 more buses per year. They have a budget of nearly 800 million euros, and I want to highlight here that they are already directly managing and operating the electric share bicycle system of the city with more than 2,000 electric bikes. So So they are not only operating the bus network, but also the electric share system of Madrid. Of course, they are involved in international projects also as providing consultancy services. And then, yeah, they are very active in terms of participating in European funded projects as well. Okay, next. I'm bringing this slide just for your quick review in case you have time. This is a link where you can consult in real time how the electric bus network is performing and functioning in Madrid. Here you have the route of one of these the two fully electric lines that are operating in Madrid. And if you have time, I'll suggest you to check it out. Well, here I have the structure of how the public transport is currently being is operating in Madrid. This is important because below you have the Madrid urban buses, the EMT, where we are going to focus later on. But it's important because it gives us an idea of how the electric bus fleet is being funded. Basically, the money comes from the Regional Transport Consortium of Madrid that is at the same time it's getting the funding from the regional government and also from the city of Madrid, in the case of Madrid, of the different municipalities in the Madrid region. And now it's turned to Rafael Orihuela, the Deputy Director of the Transportation Department of the EMT Madrid, and he's going to go further in terms of explaining you in detail how the electric bus fleet is operating and what's the experience that they've had during the process of shifting to e-mobility. So, Rafael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I have to activate the microphone.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Good morning from Spain. Good evening. I hope you are everybody well, and I want to give you all my recognition for accepting our intervention here from EMT. Well, let's start. We have 15 fully electric standard buses in use from the 2018. So they use several batteries, but these several batteries that were the only available in this year are not good batteries. Now we are starting to put in exploitation a similar type of buses, but with lithium batteries. These type of buses are similar to our buses, to our GNC or diesel buses, and they useful to do kilometers and to do 240 kilometers. But these several batteries, or these several buses, they only do 140, 160 kilometers. It depends on the line. So our experience so far is related to non-satisfying electric buses. We have to charge these buses or between shifts, or we have to adapt these buses to a special short shifts to bear the kilometers they have to do. Our experience with the new buses, these buses with new batteries, is satisfied. We are satisfied with them because they can do 240, 260, 230 kilometers. So for us, these new buses will be similar to our TNC or diesel buses. The other type of buses we have is this model Volta Rampini. You can hear, you can see the. Sorry, I have to do. Thank you. We have this model Volta Rampini that is an Italian bus. They have lithium batteries, 100 kilowatts, and they are dedicated to a short line. It's a line that drives through the cities, the old city, to the old part of the city, very narrow streets, tourism, old people, and so on. And it's a line very easy, you can see. These buses usually can cope with the shift, usually, but two of the shifts require two buses. We don't have an opportunity charge. We change the bus, and the bus with the discharged battery goes to the depot to be recharged to the next day. We are now building a very small facility in the city to recharge these buses, these two buses in the city, not in the depot. Please, next slide.
Okay.
Jaime?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Evolution, I said before, we have now 20 fully electric buses for Irizar with lithium batteries, more kilowatts. You can see there, 360 kilowatts, less time to be charged. And we are starting also with another 15 fully electric standard buses from BYD. We have not the photograph because the buses are coming, but this type of buses, Irizar and BYD, are very powerful. We have not experience of more than 2 months with them, but the experience is very, very good. BYDs have not started the service, the standard service. We have the 15 buses on our depot, and we are testing before putting them on service. As Jaime said, our plans is to buy 50 buses a year, and the plan is by 2024, 2028. It depends on the economical chances to have in relation to 2024 600 buses, always. This was the plan, but you know that with this situation we have with the virus, economic plans have changed a lot, or will change a lot. So we need perhaps to replan our challenge. Perhaps can be less buses, or to buy less GNC buses to have more money to buy electric buses. These buses, Irizar and BYD, we can see with our shared experience that belong to a new generation of buses. I think these buses are more or less the same as a diesel bus, as I said in the previous slide. Please, next slide, Jaime.
Okay.
We have put two zero emissions and zero cost, not zero cost, zero, the passengers, is free for the passengers. Zero emissions, one of them is line 001, Atocha Renfe Moncloa, and the other 002, Porta Toledo Argüelles. They have 18 buses, 10 electric for 10 buses for the line 1 and 8 for the line 2. They were put on service 2 2 months ago. So 2 months, 1 month. If you see the data, the date here, March 3rd of March, but we started with tests before. These lines with new type of buses, as I said to you, the new generation buses, can cope with the daily kilometers. We charge the buses every night, and they spend all day giving service to our passengers. And at the end of the day, they come back to a depot, and usually takes 3.5 hours, 4 hours to be charged, to be fully charged for the next day. So they operate in the same way as a diesel bus or a GNC bus. So for EMT, it was very important when we decided to get new buses, new electric buses, not to adapt the shifts, not to adapt our operation, but to get buses that can comply with our requirements. The previous experience with diesel buses with several batteries was very disappointing. We have to do many changes, many adaptations of our way we work, and we're very anti-economical. Let's put the next slide. Well, the scheme, the framework we operate the electric buses. The electric buses is this. We have fleet providers, BYD, Ether. We have now an open tender with more brands, Yutong. Next tender perhaps can include MAN from Germany. So different providers. They only provide the bus, the chargers, give us training to do the maintenance, and do the maintenance during the warranty period to do to solve the warranty problems. From the start, we made the fully maintenance of the buses. So we don't have any leasings, any special contracts or special framework for the supplier to do anything more than supply the bus. We have the energy provider with a Spanish company, and they supply the electricity. We are trying now, because we are in the challenge to have 100, 150, 200 buses. We are now negotiating with these companies to have supply contracts with special prices, because in the future we have a depot with 300 or 400 buses. We will need 20, 25, 28 megawatts of consume every day. So they need to give us good prices, because also these good prices is a part of the benefit in relation with GNC buses. MEMT, you can see there, operates the bus, operates the lines, do the maintenance, as I said, do the training with the help of provider. And after that, we do more training. We have many experience in maintaining buses, and sometimes the brands comes to ENT to have training, because our experience maintaining the buses is great, is better than the experience they have. And after that, we do the installation of the chargers, pay the energy. is easy. We prefer a scheme where we have all the control. Next slide, please. Well, this is a slide to show you how is the scheme, the economical scheme of the whole system. The City Council, Madrid, is the owner of our company, but they don't plan the transport. We have a regional transport authority. It's called Consorcio Transporte, you can see in red, that manages the whole transport in the region of Madrid, that manages all the money that comes from the transport in relation to the fares, and do the how can I explain? They
monitor
yes, they monitor how we do the work every day. Not only us, all the operators in Madrid. We are public operators, and we have private operators also, and they do the finance and the tariff compensation to every operator in relation to kilometers or in relation to passengers. After that, you can see MT Madrid. We are the e-bus operators. We do the maintenance. We belong to the city of Madrid, but in this scheme, we only act as an operator. You know, because city of Madrid, they only give money to the regional transport authority to support the operation of the whole public transport in Madrid, including ENT. And the last one is the OM, the provider, that in this case, Visa, BYD, that is only the fleet provider, and they have the buses paid by EMT, because Consorcio Transporte, the regional authority, gives money to EMT to pay these buses. Yes, Consorcio not only pays the passengers, not only pay the kilometers, they pay the investments. No? So this is the scheme. The main actor here is Consorcio, the regional transport authority. Next slide. Thank you. So this is a conclusion. To resume, the main role of Madrid is to give the transport, to act as operator, public operator, and to buy the buses, the vehicles in an open tender. The maintenance is made by MT with the only help of the initial training of the provider. The provider, the OM, in this case, was awarded with the last contracts. The first one was not very successful, but the second one, we hope we have a good experience with the new generation buses. EMT of Madrid has separate contracts to pay the electricity, and as I explained in the final scheme, EMT received funding from the regional consortium, the regional transport authority, in relation to kilometers, to passengers, and some KPIs. I forgot some KPIs, and they support our investments. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the advantages and limitations. The main problem is autonomy. With the new generation of electric buses, our short experience is that autonomy now is not a problem. The other limitation till now was the operation to recharge the batteries. In the past, with the first generation of buses, was very slow, 8 hours more or less. But now the new buses, they only need 3 hours and a half. Infrastructures is another problem because the problem is that we don't have enterprises with previous experience installing 20 megawatts facilities to charge 300, 400 buses. So now we are exploring with some electric companies to do that. And the other problem is that when you have the project, you have the solution. The problem is to find the 20 megawatts. So in the big cities, only few locations, you have big cables, big wires to obtain so big power capacity. So you have to tend to have the wire from these points, these locations, to the depots. Costs is another problem because electric buses are very expensive. We hope with the savings in energy to compensate this extra cost, but we have some fear in relation with batteries. Batteries are guaranteed for 8 years. At the end of the 8th year, the provider guarantees you a minimum capacity of 70% to this battery, but nobody have experience with that. And the problem is if you have to you need to change the batteries. Batteries are more than half the cost of the bus. And the other one is the training of your human resources in the depots to repair these buses. You have to change, need to do a cultural change from maintaining GLC buses or diesel buses to maintain an electric bus. Please, Jaime, next slide. We don't have any special regulation in Spain we don't have any special norm or a special legal text that regulates the electric charge of the bus in relation with safety. So we are living the same days we lived when we installed put in service the first GNC buses. We are discovering new things in the administrations. As I said, medium depot with 300 buses needs 20 megawatts of electric power. This is very important, using smart charging. And this smart charging depends on the hours you have the bus free to charge, because at night you need the buses also to do maintenance. It's very important to cope with the different tasks you need to do with bus. The electrical technology requires, as I said, with the human resources, a special training, because we are dealing with very high voltages, 300 volts, and you have a problem that the operator, the people cannot see the electricity. So we have some fear with have some accident with electricity. And the capacity of manufacturing electric buses in Europe is very, very low. So in our two first tenders, we only have an European contractor, that is Ibiza, Spanish contractor, because the usual German contractors, German OEMs, suppliers, they didn't have electric bus ready to go for us because they were betting for opportunity charge buses. Next slide, please.
Rafael and Hemi, may I request you to try to complete in next 3-4 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go to the. This is the ciphers or the figures for test. This you can see after. You can see the graphics here in relation with the cost by 100 kilometers. The most cheaper one is the electric bus, 20 euros 100 kilometers in relation with 54 to diesel, and the emissions, the advantage is clear. And please go to the next slide. Next one. Yes. Depot. You can see there La Lipa is the new bus depot, 100% low emission fleet with fully electric buses, 20 megawatts and full electric with special facilities for electric buses. The parking capacity we have is 333, and we think we will be the first full electric depot in Europe of this size, because in France, in Paris, has full electric. We have full electric depots, but smaller ones. And the conclusions. The next one. Sorry. Yes. Is the best solution? Yes, it's the best solution. Is mature? Is ready? Yes, at this moment, not in the past. But no one has long-term experience in relation with the buses, how they are going to behave. It requires very high electricity power, and this is difficult to obtain in cities because we have to pay much money to have the wire and to have the electric station, to have the electricity, the power. And it's very important to have, at least in Europe, at least in Spain, a great collaboration with administration to have papers and permissions passed, and electric companies to obtain the power also in a fast place. And no more things. This is all. Sorry for the time, but I lost my watch.
Thank you very much, Hemi, and also Rafael. Very, very important insights and details that you were able to share. I have question, Rafael. I think yours is very unique operations where it's a full supply contract and you are maintaining it all by yourself.
Yeah.
How has been the experience from 2 points, like what kind of trainings really helped the transfer of knowledge from the OEMs, bus providers to your team, and how effective has that been? And second, like there are a lot of questions because a lot of other STUs are still kind of continue to use OEM services for doing maintenance and not the knowledge
I lost the voice.
very organized fashion, and that remains a continuous dependence on them. So how you have solved this problem? And of course you have solved it, but I think for audience it will be very interesting to understand a little elaboration there.
Yes. Can you repeat the second question, because I lost the audio?
Sure. I asked one question like how has been the training? How have you organized training from OEMs to your team? One question. And second, like by doing this maintenance internal, how much cost optimization in maintenance of electric buses when you compare to the diesel buses?
Oh, great, great. The maintenance training was the way we work in relation with training. Usually providers train trainers, train out trainers. Usually takes 1 week for the first step maintenance and 2 weeks for the 2 or 3 steps maintenance. After that, these trainers train our people. The maintenance of the electric buses is easier, is much easier, but is you have to take in account this more dangerous. So our main problem with training and with maintenance is to transmit how important is safety in electric maintenance. No? Because our people is very confident because is accustomed to diesel and electric buses, diesel and CNG buses. With electric buses, they don't perceive the danger. The maintenance is much easier and much cheaper. We don't have exact figures, but perhaps in relation with the electric parts of the bus, perhaps 90% at the moment. This is a very important moment now because we have very new electric buses. They are very new. The only problem in relation with maintenance was with batteries. The first buses, Zebra batteries, are very bad. Now we are doing a program to exchange these old Zebra batteries by new lithium batteries, and we have to do a special adaptation. But the only problem have been in relation with batteries. Two of the batteries of the battery packs were caught on fire, and the others in 8 packs of batteries were out of order. They lose the energy, the capacity, and we lose these packs. Fortunately, the battery packs were under a warranty and were free. They exchange for a new one. But this is because we don't want more Zebra batteries. In relation with lithium batteries, we have no problem. We have no problem at the moment, but we are starting the use. So we have a life experience of 3 months. I don't know
around batteries, Rafael. There is one question. Like coming from the experiences, what Laghu was stating from the 7 STUs that we are jointly conducting an assessment of electric buses. We have seen that the actual range that the STU is getting from electric bus, in many of the cases, it is almost 50% of the quoted technical range from the OEM. In such cases, do you believe that some kind of city-specific drive testing of battery performance should be undertaken? And I think after your experience around batteries performance and its degradation, I would also like to hear from Shailendra how this risk can be curtailed or can be rightly planned under contracting, Shailendra. So first, Rafael, if you can share your thoughts on how to handle battery performance and its range if it is not coming as expected or as quoted by the OEMs.
Well, when we buy the buses in the public tender, we put special penalties for the battery packs. These special penalties are related to the capacity through the time, are related in the performance in this time, are in relation also with the life, not the capacity, the degradation, in relation with the batteries have to survive at least 5 years in the first tender and 8 years in the second tender. So this warranty is the same for the capacity and the life of the battery. Can have to survive 8 years and have to survive also with at least 70% of their capacity at the 8th year. If they don't comply with that, the penalty is they have to exchange the battery packs that don't comply with, they are dead, or they don't comply with the 70% of capacity. We have a special facility and special circuit in one of our depots that is very big, and we check when we buy the buses, we do the tender, when we receive the prototypes previously to give the tender, we check the prototypes in a special circuit that is measured with bus stops, with special loads. We load the bus also with some ballast. We check the prototypes, and after that, when we receive the buses, we check the final buses that we are going to receive unit by unit to check the capacity. In the future, when we will do greater tenders with more buses, we'll check not all the buses, but a little part of them to assess that the capacity and the performance of the battery corresponds to the text of the offer. Is this answer good for you? Covers all the things? I know. See, I've lost something.
Sure. I think, Shailendra, if you can also share your viewpoint. You talked about an interesting industry engagement, and I think especially in India, this problem of some technical KWH battery pack providing range, and that too is a mix of all different parameters, right? Like it's not only just battery, but it's about the loading, temperature, air conditioning, road congestion. So anything that you have kind of looked into from the contracting side?
Yeah, Rahul, thanks for the question. In this current project where we are working on, what we have made the provision of supplying 2 prototype unit of buses, what the winning consortium will be operating. So immediately on signing of letter of intent, the consortium has to give 2 prototype buses with exact what they have committed as part of the contract. And these buses will be running over a period of time until the time the infrastructure is ready, and their performance, whether it is in terms of bus performance or battery performance, will be closely monitored, and then come out that whatever they are committing, whether it is giving the same result, or do we need to look for some better alternative or tweak the KPIs. So this is a provision which we have made. And as Rafael said, the same thing, they are also before buying the buses, they are also making a provision of prototype. So prototyping is something which these cities need to work in India also, that before actual rolling out, you need to test the system.
Thank you, Shailendra. I think
Sorry, can I add something?
but I think yeah, sure, Rafael.
It's only I forgot. In relation with air condition and this HVAC system, usually autonomy get reduced in more or less 20%. 20%. So we make the tests of autonomy without air conditioning. This is the only thing was
air conditioning is a big energy guzzler for electric buses.
Yeah, same for Middle East also, same for Middle East, because air condition is what it is required. So there were some other cities, not this city, but they were also done the piloting of the electric buses, wherein the operator had committed that the buses will operate at a particular temperature. But it was, after a point of time, it was not running properly as per the committed, so then they have to improve upon the whole thing. So yes, air conditioning is very important while, finalizing the specification, and that is a challenge also in terms of electric buses. So one of the suggestion which came from the industry is that rather than using complete electric buses, why can't we have an hybrid buses, because, peak summer happens about a month or 2 months in the Middle East. So we could have a provision of the, some hybrid buses and some fully electric buses. So that is, yes, that is a challenge. You need to learn as more and more electric buses coming. You need to learn and adopt because there is no something ideal which we can achieve in the first go.
That is right, Shailendra. Lagu, you have questions, please?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So I have a couple of questions, two questions from Shailendra. Yeah. So
Yes.
one of the interesting aspect of your project planning is the which is you said as a is kind of a BRT. Okay, you call it as a ERT, and which has a I understand which is quite similar to many of the BRT systems across the globe, where you are providing an exclusive roadway for the buses and which is not mixing with the other traffic. This is an interesting aspect. And how do you see that where exactly Indian cities are need to learn from this particular aspect? Especially, I'm talking about the big cities in India where the existing speeds of the buses, commercial speeds of the buses, are as low as less than 10 kmph. So it means that if you have electric buses, and we are anyway have those kind of a the range anxiety as far as our batteries are concerned, and with this kind of congestion buses are operating, so a significant amount of energy might go into the congestion rather than completing the scheduled operation. So how do you see the entire things as far as this exclusivity concerned? And at the same time, because you are from India, you have worked so much, and we are kind of after so many 10, 11 BRT experience, we are BRT allergy not now. Okay, so how do you see this?
Yeah, Lagu, it's a good question, because in this city also, when we were finalizing the route wherein the electric buses will ply, this issue was basically been taken care of. That in case of congestion area where, running electric buses will be kind of a challenge. So then, as you see in my presentation, I said under the concept planning stage, we had identified the routes where the electric buses will run. Other routes where, there is a lot of congestion and electric buses is not something which basically, feasible alternative, the conventional fuel buses or in hybrid buses will be used. So this is what my advice to Indian cities is also, that while they finalize the electric bus, it is not that the whole city bus network to be changed to electric bus in one single stage. You need a phased approach wherein in the phase one, you need to identify certain routes where electric buses would be kind of used, preferably on a dedicated corridor. If not, then some bus priority measures also need to be given, so that these buses will have a competing speed compared to the comparative mode. Because if some, patronage need to increase, there should be some modal shift from the existing either car or two-wheeler to these buses. So if the buses are running at 10 km per hour, then perhaps the private vehicle is also running around 12-15 km per hour kind of range. So then competing mode is also running. So you don't need to work on the speed, but yes, definitely electric buses doesn't seem to be a good alternative on such congested road network. This is what we found in this city.
Okay, thank you. My second question is that in your contractual framework, you were talking about that one of your condition is that cost operation and maintenance cost of these proposed electric bus contract should not be more than 75% of your existing O&M buses. So our initial trends of Indian cities said that post subsidy, mean almost 45% of the capital subsidy, we are getting the per kilometer cost at par, electric buses cost post subsidy at par with the our diesel bus operation. So I would say this looks like a very ambitious expectation. So from where did you arrive on this figure, and how confident are you to achieve this?
If you look at it, the payment to the private operator is basically comprising of two payments. One is the cost for the buses. So on top of the O&M cost, the operator will also get the leasing cost of the buses. So the O&M cost, when I say 75%, it is only the operations and maintenance cost of the electric buses compared to the operations and maintenance cost of the conventional buses, which the authority right now. So we have not loaded the capital cost while arriving out the 75% number.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So this is from my side. If Rahul, we have another question, so we can post.
Yeah, I have a question for Hemi. Hemi, I think in your earlier slide of talking about EMT, you also talked about electric bikes being supported by EMT. And in Shailendra presentation, he also talked about creating charging infrastructure for almost similar 2000 numbers of electric cars. So you have a point of view like how this other paratransit modes, be it two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and four-wheeler, also needs to be integrated with electric buses for better adoption, and what trends you are seeing in Europe around it, Hemi?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Basically, we have to distinguish, make a distinction between two-wheeler vehicles, electric bikes and electric mopeds, and electric cars or buses, electric buses, because the infrastructure is very different and the needs are very different. So in the case of electric bikes, the example that I've mentioned of Madrid, they already have more than 200 stations where you can charge the electric bike directly when it is not being used. So this is a fixed infrastructure, but this is only useful for these vehicles. So if you want to, with this infrastructure, you cannot create synergies with electric cars. So you have to balance the infrastructure in the city in order to give the opportunity to charge electric cars in your city, both from private citizens and also from electric shared fleets, so that you can foster the adoption of e-mobility. So it has to be approached case by case, because if you are talking about installing new infrastructure, you have to take into account how your city physically is. It's different. The approach would be different in terms of having an old European city with narrow streets and a large city center, or to have a new planned city in I don't know, in China or anywhere else. So I think in this case that would be the sensible way to approach it.
And one interesting question, probably last, Shailendra, like you brought a point that project preparation before procurement should be at least a year. Can you kind of quickly tell like what kind of detailing information should the documents in India? It only talks about okay, we need 100 e-buses doing this much of range and this thing, but it does not give a holistic plan like okay, what routes these buses will be running exactly, so that the operator has more idea about the road congestion, those traffic detailing and other things to ensure that they really get their configurations right. So what level of detailing you think should be actually done as a feasibility study by the STUs and then communicated as part of the RFP document of the holistic planning to actually get more rational bids and more stronger participation?
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. It's a very good question because before launching this project, we had a market sensitization workshop which was conducted, wherein this question was asked because this project is being implemented under a public-private partnership basis. Rather than PPPs, if you are outrightly buying the buses, perhaps you may not need, so much of time. But since this is a PPP project, you need a well conceived, detailing so that which would enable the bidders to bid for the project. Because if you are not giving that information to the bidder will consider it as a risk and the cost will be on to authority. The project will become expensive. So in the market sensitization workshop, we took a feedback from the industry that what level of detailing you would need before bidding out this project. So what we kind of agree with the industry that some sort of concept level detailing wherein you identify the route, the location of depot, the location of charging infrastructure, the specification of the buses, specification of batteries, and other technical specification related to the dedicated corridor design concept level. If you give it to them, which basically help them to cost for the project, because ultimately the private sector bidder is costing for your project. So all sort of detail which would help him to cost the project should be given, not really the detail which he need for the implementation, because the detail which he need for the implementation we have kept it aside as the role for the private sector. So the detailed design to be done by the private sector, which would help him to implement the project, but to cost the project what detail he needs has been provided.
Okay, so that is interesting. Everyone, thank you very much. I think we have gone already 7 minutes over our time. That I think I must first of all thank all our speakers. They have been really fantastic, very open and transparent in really sharing the real numbers and making it useful for all of us. I myself have learned a lot during this discussion. So thank you, Shailendra, Hemi, and Rafael. And we hope to engage you further in our continued discussions. Our next topic and third webinar is planned on 7th May. That will be focused on e-buses operations and charging. And we will be going deeper dive into e-bus and chargers, planning, scheduling, and fleet monitoring. So in this e-Mobilog series, we are opening layer by layer and diving much deeper into all aspects of electric buses. So we hope to continue making and adding guys for being partner on e-Mobilog series. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Rahul, before we push out, I have a suggestion, So thanks for the audience and thanks for GIZ. On the screen, I see some 45 questions. So what I would suggest, if you can circulate these questions to the speaker and we'll try to address, how best we can address these questions to the participant, and then you circulate these as the, along with the presentation to all these participants so that everyone get a clarity about what they ask. Because of time limitation, we were not able to address all the questions.
That is very kind of you, Shailendra. We will do this and share those questions together with the recording on our website as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.